All right, and this next one is from one of my favorite YouTubers right now, Lazy Peon, and it is titled, When Will the MMORPG Glory Days Return? Probably never, to be honest, but we have our one hope. Ashes of Creation, that's what most of us are hoping for, but let's see what Lazy Peon has to say. I'm not sure if they ever will, though.
Do you miss the glory days of MMORPGs? Back when you were dropped in what felt like a completely unexplored...
Again, I touched on it a little bit earlier today. I think the glory days, most of the people talking are around my age. The glory days were when we were children. We've just grown up, and there won't be the nostalgia that being a child will bring, you know?
Explored world with infinite possibilities. You spawned into the game for the first time, and there was instantly a feeling of mystery. You'd quest for a bit, see some high levels hanging out near the starting area, wearing their epic
I never played
gear,
RuneScape.
and it'd inspire you to keep playing to eventually obtain that same badass gear. Cosmetics from a cash shop and transmog wasn't a thing back then, remember? Every game felt like a new adventure, every character meaningful, with people potentially recognizing you in a capital city within server communities. The glory days of MMOs felt so magical because the games were huge, the music was epic, and for most of us, these were our first open world multiplayer experiences. But not all of it is nostalgia. The success of classic WoW iterations and old school RuneScape show that older design philosophies, whilst outdated and used differently nowadays, can still appeal to a large audience. Even the forefathers of MMOs like Ultima Online or EverQuest still see a lot of people going back to the private servers just to experience that classic style of MMO design, where your choices were impactful, progression felt meaningful, and social interaction was more abundant. I'd consider the MMO glory days to be the time period from roughly 1999 to 2012. The release of World of Warcraft in 2004 elevated this time period significantly though. These years, starting from Ultima Online, EverQuest, RuneScape to WoW, and so many more that I can't list, created a highly competitive and, most importantly, incredibly motivated market. People loved MMO.
Dude, I like logging into the world and just seeing people everywhere. Britain Bank, there were so many people there. It was something you had never understood in games before. The old school MMOs, it wasn't just that the design was good and that they were really good games or anything like that. It was just so new, so different, so exciting because of it, that difference. They're not different anymore. I mean, they're different in like worse ways, but it's still, oh wow, there's so many people there. Doesn't have the same excitement that
MMOs, and developers wanted to be a part of this new virtual world phenomenon. Just from 2004 to 2005, 31 new MMORPGs were released, ranging from Dofus and Metin 2 to World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 1. In 2021, we saw Elion and New World release. Elion died pretty much instantly, and New World has had its fair share of struggles, to say the least. In 2022, we've only really had Lost Ark. Throne and Liberty by NCSoft was supposed to release at the end of the year, but is delayed till 2023. So as an MMO content creator, I've really had to scrape the bottom of the barrel the past few years. I kind of feel like MMOs peaked around WoW's Wrath of the Lich King expansion that saw a peak sub count of 12 million players, and this was at a time when way less people had access to PCs capable of running large MMO-like games. In today's gaming market, if we had a new MMO phenomenon as big as WoW was at its peak, surely that player count would be at least double due to the growth of gaming as a whole. So what happened? And what would need to happen to MMOs for us to go through another time period where MMORPGs are the hype genre again? Where every dev is jumping on the bandwagon trying to cash in on their own MMO, like from 2004 to 2012. Are we, the players, the problem? Is corporate greed just taking over? Or are younger gamers with their shorter...
I feel like how is corporate greed taking over when the amount of money it takes to make these games is insane? And I mean, typically the better ones have subscription models. So the idea behind it would be to maintain the player base instead of kill it, right?
For attention spans, just not into MMO's long-winded progression. We'll get into all of that, but first, sponsor. Infinite Magic Raid is the newest and biggest idle RPG hero collector of 2022. Enter the Lowe's Continent, a fantasy world with charming, stylized graphics, full of mystery, magic, and evil to defeat. To begin your adventure, you'll need a team of heroes, and in Infinite Magic Raid there's over 200 of them spread across 10 factions, each with their own unique skills, personality, and high-quality 3D model. Whilst easy to learn, Infinite Magic Raid has highly strategic battles, in which you'll need to learn how to build an effective team composition to counter your enemies. Some heroes synergize better together than others. Will you build a burst comp to nuke down enemies in seconds, or will you outlast them by using more tanks and healers? Infinite Magic Raid is packed with content, from competitive PvP arena to a sprawling main campaign, fun minigames, dispatch missions, and most notably, the dungeons, which feature roguelike map exploration and plot development. Consistency will be the key to success in this game. Play every day to collect AFK rewards, cultivate, and challenge increasingly difficult enemies until you reach the top. Click the link in the description below to play Infinite Magic Raid now, and use gift code IM777.
I mean, this is such an ironic ad for this video,
to get
right?
a ton of rewards displayed on screen that will give you a big advantage over anyone who didn't see this video. Download now. For the past few years, MMO releases have felt something like this. A new game comes out, everyone's excited and hyping it up pre-launch.
Then check this out.
What is Eternum?
Damn it!
Because even if the game sucks long term, that new MMO feeling is always fun for a while. Maybe you get your old gaming group back together for launch, book some time off work, and within a week or two the cracks have already started to show, and the game's bleeding players. After going through this cycle over and over again, you start to get a sense of guilt that the time you scheduled off work probably could have been spent better with friends, family, or an actual vacation. But instead you just wasted your time on another failed MMO, making you more and more jaded. New MMO releases nowadays almost never see a growing player base after launch. It felt like MMOs during this time period did a much better job at retaining players and even gaining players. In recent years, the only MMO I can think of that's actually managed to gain players is Final Fantasy XIV.
Konnichiwa, you magnificent bastards!
Are people just fundamentally bored of the MMO formula? Why do so many games feel empty and repetitive? What's happened to us, and how has game design changed in the last 20 years? Well, for one, we have changed. Like a pack of rabid dogs, we're jumping on every nugget of information whenever a new MMO is announced.
True.
Early access, oversharing development updates, and open betas get us excited for the adventures to come, but also allow us to explore the world, theory craft builds, and map out leveling routes, so by the time a new MMO has fully released, we're ready to min-max the ever-living shit out of it.
Yep.
Less people played games that way back in the day. Do you remember being excited to get your first pair of shoulders back in vanilla WoW? They looked like a rug at best and gave you nothing but armor, but to fill that empty slot after days of progress felt amazing. I bet there were times where you'd stray from the path just to kill random mobs in the world, not because they were optimal XP, but because it was new and it looked at you funny.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
We haven't even touched on data mining yet, but let's just call this overarching change information pollution. The moment info is leaked or discovered, it's shared in the form of YouTube videos, Twitch live streams, tons of different guide websites, and word of mouth. This will not go away, and yes, I understand that I'm part of the problem here. Nowadays, there's much more of a financial incentive for people to create websites with in-depth guides on every aspect of an MMO. Achieving world first max level whilst live streaming on Twitch could potentially kick off a streaming career, and sponsors would happily pay thousands of dollars for a 90-second ad on a gaming video with a few 100k views. MMO developers need to find a way to make their games with enough complexity that simply watching guides won't necessarily make you succeed. Compared to older games, modern MMOs typically have a much more casualized open world and overall experience, to the point where going out and exploring doesn't feel dangerous. Unless you're inside a raid or doing some instanced challenge mode content, monsters in the world are usually trivial. Contrast this to EverQuest back in the day, where random mobs roaming the world would often require multiple players to take down. Developer time is often wasted by focusing on brainless target dummies across the world, in which killing them makes you feel absolutely nothing. If I attack a humanoid in WoW Classic, it will run away at low health, which not only makes sense realistically, but also makes you think about executing targets, or just simply not pulling monsters inside huge camps. Most games don't even think about simple interactions like that anymore. In the pursuit of accessibility, MMOs have kinda lost their sense of accomplishment, during the leveling anyway. Also, is it me, or did older MMOs just feel bigger? Larger worlds, longer time to get to max level, more races, professions, dungeons, mob types and quest lines? Have developers put less effort into making their MMOs ambitious due to so many failing over the years, and it being considered more risky to make an MMO compared to any other gaming genres from a financial perspective?
I think he asked so many questions there, but yeah, I think good point. Fast travel killed the MMO. But like Ultima Online had fast travel. The thing is you had to go to that spot first, and then you could fast travel to it, which is basically what fast travel is in every other game. I think that that's totally fine. The idea of the world, I think the leveling is part of it. I think it's more. I'm trying to think of like why games nowadays just don't. I think leveling achievements, which people hate, you know, the grind of it felt good, but you don't necessarily remember how painful it was to do it in the first place. So you were doing it, it was painful as hell, and then when you achieve it, it felt so good that you achieved it. But then if you were asked to do that grind again for whatever reason, you may have just been like, you know what, I'm done. That's why you have people who like level, like you could pay people to level your characters, right? And things like that. So it's yeah, it wasn't great, but
games are made as a product nowadays more so than ever. Data analysis are at the forefront, with market and consumer behavior studied to maximize player engagement and profit. Most MMOs from 1999 to 2012 used a subscription fee business model with no cash shop. This incentivized developers to make the game as good as possible, constantly pumping out updates to keep people handing over money every month because they enjoy the game.
Yet WoW
this was fine until some developers realized they could take a different approach and see much larger profits. The free-to-play model, aka create problem to sell solution. For this to be successful, you want to create a low skill floor at the start of the game so players don't quit. In sub-fee MMOs, players are more likely to persist with difficulty because they've already paid the money and have committed to invest time into that game. Once a player is sufficiently invested into a free-to-play MMO, you can start to introduce the little annoying systems or inconvenience them in some way. Boring dailies, lack of inventory space, have every in-game obtainable outfit look like arse, cap the amount of dungeon entries you can do, the list goes on and on. At that point, you can then sell them the solution. This is why games like Lost Ark have such arbitrary leveling experiences. It's simply to create a cheap feeling of investment so that players are more likely to spend money on the cash shop later on. Free-to-play MMOs have put developers against the players by making it financially beneficial to create problems to sell solutions. Whereas the old sub-fee MMOs, the developers are incentivized to give players the best game possible to keep them subscribed. For me, this is the biggest reason why MMOs from 1999 to 2012 just felt different. The business model just allowed these games to attempt to be the best versions of themselves.
They had
Whilst
to be.
Modern MMO monetization sounds greedy and malicious, It often is, by the way.
When I look out over the next decade, I see more opportunity for our company than I...
To play devil's advocate, it's bloody expensive to make an MMORPG, more so than any other genre of game. Some MMOs have taken 7 to 9 years of development time to make, and cost close...
Would I pay $10 a month for Star Citizen? In its current state? No. In what it's supposed to be? Maybe.
...to $200 million. Many failed MMOs never made back their development costs in revenue before being shut down. So with many examples of failures over the past few years, there's increased pressure from investors for a company to make back that money as quickly as possible, even if it damages the integrity of the game in the process. Think about it. Why would you invest 50 to 100 mil over 7 years to make an MMO that may or may not be successful, when you could invest less than 1 mil to make a mobile game that will probably see you 10x your investment within 2 years?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as gaming monetization has changed, the risk versus reward just isn't there for MMO investment nowadays like it used to be back when it was the hype genre. So is there any hope? Will we ever see MMOs become the hype bandwagon genre again? Is the fantasy of what's portrayed in Sword Art Online, Ready Player One, or Overlord a real possibility in the future?
I don't know.
Or would those games actually be ruined by pay-to-win in reality? Well, as for the short term, we actually do have a few MMOs in development by massive teams. You've got the Riot MMO,
The Riot one?
Soulframe by Digital Extremes. As much as New World hasn't lived up to the hype, at the very least, it's improving, adding new content, and still isn't pay-to-win.
I just don't buy New World can do it. I don't think it's revivable.
And you've also got the possibility of successful entrepreneurs who are passionate about the genre making their own MMOs, as we've seen with Ashes of Creation. Maybe one of those games will absolutely pop off and more studios will jump on the bandwagon to appeal to the new generation of MMO gamers. If that doesn't happen, we're surely going to reach the point with AI and technology that MMOs just become easier and easier to make. Unreal Engine 5 has made significant improvements to the development pipeline of games. There's a worry that AI-generated art is going to ruin the art industry. And computers are still becoming more powerful every year. Perhaps one day in the future we can just tell AI what we want in a game, and it will be able to do hundreds of hours of artwork, asset design and coding within a few minutes, vastly reducing the amount of time it takes to actually make an MMO, the costs associated with it, and as a result improving the risk versus reward of such a venture for investors. I think this is all just a matter of time, really. If we got to that point and it became easy to make MMOs, perhaps they would become less pay to win due to there being more competition in the market.
But they probably wouldn't have a soul.
Honestly, that's just pure hopium on my part. I'm not sure it's possible to put the monetization genie back in the bottle at this point.
No.
So let's just say we do see MMOs become the hype genre again. What would those games look like? Would they be drastically different to MMO design of old?
No.
Or would they go back to a more classic design?
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Will developers ever be able to solve rampant RMT in almost every game? Is it possible to develop a new MMO and have it not be completely ruined by data mining before it's fully released? And what kind of MMO would actually appeal to today's meta-mentality gaming audience? Thick ass thighs. Truthfully, I don't think we know the answer, but it's probably a game that's able to play to the strengths of what made people fall in love with MMOs in the first place. The idea of an alternate reality, a second life where you escape from your day job, a game that can make you feel invested over a long period of time due to overcoming adversity, and a game designed in a way where the developers aren't acting against the interests of the players for profit. I want to see the next big MMO.
See, it's not acting in the interest against the players for profit. They're acting in the interests of only certain players at the detriment of the rest, right? Is when you're selling, basically cheats for wealthy people or people who are willing to invest in the game and just focusing on whales, then what happens is a certain part of your player base is the one who would have purchased a subscription model is the kind that just gets left in the dust, right? And yeah, I don't know. It's I don't think that'll ever go away. I mean, even in Ashes of Creation, you have cosmetics and things like that to be sold, but at least they tout no pay to win.
Bring back that sense of awe you had when you saw a player on the server with some crazy legendary item that nobody else has.
Yes, dude.
A game that brings back social interaction, friction between players, and a good mix of content from casual to ultra hardcore. Remember back in the day when MMOs were so popular that you'd actually see ads for them on mainstream TV?
That's just like MapleStory.
No.
The free online game where you get to hang out with friends and experience the out of the ordinary.
What the fuck is this?
By the way, what the hell happened with all the badass PvP montages from back in the day? Why don't people make them anymore? Invest in the players, invest in the world, invest
PvP
in social
doesn't matter in
interaction
games
and
anymore.
organic content. If the players can create their own fun, overcome their own challenges, then waiting for the next roller coaster ride to release every 6 months won't feel so draining and repetitive. How do long-term WoW or Final Fantasy players not completely burn out of their games? Guilds, friend circles, roleplay, completionism, raiding, and PvP, most of which include some sort of social interaction. Allow the players to create their own storylines.
I'm a paladin with 18 charisma and 97 hit points. I can use my Helm of Disintegration and do 1d4 damage as my half-elf mage wields his +5 Holy Avenger.
Paladins can't use the Helm of Disintegration.
Drama between guilds fighting for territory, full-time crafters, gatherers, full-focused raiders, a ruthless PvP gladiator, or maybe I could make a name for myself ERPing in some degenerate player-made dungeon for coin. Ultimately, I guess the question is, will players adapt to a more modern approach to MMOs, or is it old-school design philosophy that will prevail in the end? When will the glory days of MMOs return? Only time will tell.
I don't think they're going to.
Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Let me know what you think about the future of MMORPGs in the comments below. Smash that like button whilst inhaling an unhealthy dose of hopium for the algorithm gods, and social media on screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, I just do not think they will, sadly. I think the only chance we have is Ashes, because of what they say they want to do, but even then, I think it's almost destined that the start of Ashes will be absolutely epic. Everyone's going to be playing it. It's going to be super, super cool. And then eventually it's going to fall off because it's just so hard to keep players engaged these days, right? Like, people played WoW, people played Ultima Online for literal years and years and years. And the ability to make content that is years and years and years long is so hard to do now. It seems like it was because you get the players who don't want to grind, and the only way to do it is to force players to grind. So I think if you're going to have the glory days of MMOs, it's going to be really, really difficult leveling and long waits to hit the goals that you want to hit, and they're going to lose so many players on that. That's literally the only reason that I think Ashes might be successful, is that it's a subscription model. So you, like he said at the beginning, you feel that you might want to continue even though it is a struggle at the start, you know, where most games get you, okay, I'm leveling, I'm getting better, boom, 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 I'm hooked, right? And and then as soon as you hit the wall, you would quit. Where, honestly, I don't think New World did terrible in their leveling, because every time I played, I felt engaged with leveling. I was excited to do it. I was hyped for it. The problem with New World was, as soon as I hit 60, they didn't have the content to keep me going. Or people that I was playing with passed me by so quickly that I was left in the dust, right? So it just felt demoralizing. So I don't know. It's going to be really hard. Also, player investment required for MMO compared to other gameplay sessions and newer audiences, lower attention spans. Yeah, that's one of the, like, I just don't think it's like people are just gonna go and play over here, play over there, play different games because they don't want to. They can't commit. The MMO player is, you know, from the late 90s, early 2000s, are all adults and have children now. They cannot dedicate the time that they want to games like this. So it always feels disingenuous as someone who makes YouTube videos. Like, it's somewhat disingenuous for a lazy peon to do this as well, is say that they want these things because they can do them when the majority of the people that are watching them cannot, right? And that's why the glory days of MMOs will never be again, is because you aren't in college anymore. You aren't in high school where, you know, you're done at 3:00 and you got nothing else to do but game until it's time to go to bed, right? You finish your homework, bam. Now I'm sitting on the computer all night, 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. I can, but you can't, right? And that's the difference. Well, I can't, but I actually carve out time for it every day. And I wake up at 6:00 in the morning to get my game time in because I wouldn't be able to in the evening. So yeah, it's just totally different, but people still want these games. There is still an interest for these games. It's just a matter of getting the right balance. And yeah, again, I think the sub model is definitely the way to do it because you've invested in that month and you're going to put in that month of time. It's just the game company has to do a good job of keeping you engaged.